Well, derby weekend in the Premier League continues with another London derby of sorts. Chelsea not making too far a trip, Shaka, from West London to South London to play Crystal Palace, a Crystal Palace that has continued to impress under Patrick Vieira. But what's a derby without some controversy? I suppose we'll just start right there. Chelsea winning this match 2-1 at the death. But the big talking point, should Thiago Silva have been sent off for handling the ball, and how that probably would have affected how the game went on? Shaka, just thoughts on everything, on how that was handled.
Listen, first of all, it's never easy going to Selhurst Park. It's from a player's perspective, it's an awful journey in that it's all through the city. It's a difficult ground to get to, and inevitably caught in traffic. And I'm just kind of giving you a player's perspective on this. As short a journey as it is, it's never an easy one. Selhurst Park is never an easy place to go to, especially with this Crystal Palace. Yeah. And make no mistake about it, Patrick Vieira has Crystal Palace playing some incredible football. They've got a lot of young, really exciting talents. None more so, in my opinion, than Eze, that kind of epitomizes so much around South London, that creativity, that flair, that excitement that he brings onto the park. And that's exactly how Palace started. And they got the lead, deservedly so. They were looking the better of the two teams. Of course, all eyes were on Graham Potter and his first league game in charge of Chelsea and exactly what they would look like. But early on, it was more about Crystal Palace than it was about Chelsea. And as I mentioned, got the lead. As you mentioned, there was then this incident with Thiago Silva, under pressure, gave the ball away, handled, and all eyes were on the referee at that point to see what he would do. In the end, I think Thiago Silva can count himself a little bit lucky to see yellow, because I'm sure there are referees who would have interpreted that differently and given us red. Again, trying to be neutral, and I wish I could go one way or the other, but I am firmly on the fence with this one. Thiago Silva was the last man, but it was quite wide. There were a couple of the defenders centrally, so you could make the argument that there was just about enough cover for it to be a yellow. But given the cynical nature of the handball, again, you can understand why some referees would interpret it differently. So you accept that yellow card for what it is. If you're Chelsea, you think it's fair. If you're Palace, you think otherwise. And then you mentioned Thiago Silva then on the end of a long ball forward, nods it down for Aubameyang. Yeah. Great turn, fantastic finish by Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to draw Chelsea level. There was an injury at the time, and you see Patrick Vieira going to the referee. He's having conversations with him and the linesman and the fourth official. He gets a yellow card, and you feel it all hinged on that Thiago Silva decision, which came back to punish Crystal Palace so cruelly. But then I thought Crystal Palace were very good again.
That they deserve more from the game, you think?
I feel so. Kepa was called into action a number of times, and they went very close on quite a few occasions. In all honesty, I thought it was fairly balanced. Probably the second half was more balanced than the first, where I thought Crystal Palace were the better team in the first half. I thought the second half was more balanced, but still, they had some very good looks at goal and probably count themselves a little bit unlucky not to go ahead. I'm not sure. I can't think of too many glaring opportunities for Chelsea myself. They did have an indirect free kick that Mason Mount put wide. A couple other decent chances, but I thought Palace, certainly in terms of chances, shaded that. And then you know what this game is like. Conor Gallagher on the sidelines. Crystal Palace fans start to jeer straight away because he's coming on. And you just, from the time you heard the jeering, you just kind of knew what was in store. And in fairness to Gallagher, what a turn, what a strike for the finish. It was a moment of genuine class and quality that I don't think anybody else in the Chelsea shirt showed for 88 minutes. It really was an incredibly well taken goal by Gallagher. And then all of a sudden you feel a little bit hard done by for Crystal Palace, but take nothing away from Gallagher and that moment of brilliance and that finish. That was the highlight of the game for me.
Well, Conor Gallagher, of course, throwing some serious salt and lime into the Crystal Palace wounds there. But we, speaking about him and then, of course, about Aubameyang, because, Gallagher himself seemed a little frustrated at Chelsea at the start of the season. Now this is going to do a world of good for him. Aubameyang is someone as well that kind of needs a world of good after going from Arsenal to then Barcelona to now to Chelsea. And then everything that's done now at Chelsea, we're going to start wondering, what is Graham Potter trying to do, especially with some of these players that kind of needed these second chances. So what did you think of, because as you said, nobody else really showed that class apart from Conor Gallagher. So do you finally see what Graham Potter's trying to do, or is there a lot more left to be done knowing the standards that Chelsea fans have for this team?
I'm a little bit uncertain. And I was looking at Chelsea to see how they would improve. And I want to say I didn't see an awful lot, but again, that would be doing a disservice to Patrick Vieira and Crystal Palace, because again, I stand by it. I think Crystal Palace are a very good team. They're a difficult team to play against. They really are. So maybe time will tell. I think the other challenge for Potter, of course, is even though we had this long break, one because of the unexpected, certainly unanticipated passing of the Queen, but then because of international football. But Potter loses a lot of his players on international duty. So while he has this big kind of period of downtime, he really didn't have an awful lot of his first team to work with. So it's still very much a work in progress. The one thing I will say about Potter is that he has shown he will drop the big names. He will leave you out if he doesn't feel what you're doing or who you are as a player fits in. And I mentioned Gallagher's goal as a true moment of brilliance in this game today. That doesn't mean to take away anything from Aubameyang's own turn and finish, because that was not as good, but it was a good piece of finishing from a striker that a lot of people were looking to see how he would fare, to see how he would cope now that Thomas Tuchel has moved out, and how he would fit into Graham Potter's plans. But that was a striker's finish, and a very good striker's finish. So I think both of those have done themselves the world of good, because nothing I believe is set in stone for Graham Potter just yet. So when you show those moments, I think it puts you in a really good position going forward. Now that he's got all his players back, we'll see what Potter can do with Chelsea on the training ground to get them back to where I'm sure Chelsea fans believe they should be.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.